Deep in the desert of New Mexico lies an ancient enigma that defies explanation. This is Chetro Ketl, part of Chaco Canyon. This is a massive 500-room megalithic structure built over 1,000 years by the Ancestral Puebloan people. Some theories say it was built with ancient advanced technology. They have evidence and they've dug down and they found proof. Archaeologists disagree, but there's evidence to suggest that the Great Kiva was used as a lunar calendar.
There's no 5 or 10 based counting system where 28 is a number. What if they're also paying attention to something that has to do with the moon?
28 days.
This whole back wall was aligned to the long lunar cycle. Some doorways and windows were walled up. Who are they trying to keep out? Or maybe a better question is, who are they trying to keep in? Like, this was a window, and then all of a sudden you got these huge rocks. Even Graham Hancock investigated Chaco Canyon for Netflix's Ancient Apocalypse series. And there's more. Chaco Canyon continues to blow our minds, and we've only scratched the surface.
The only thing that's certain is that this is a really big deal. I think a lot of the answers are here.
Nobody even knows this is here.
They have evidence and they dug down and they found proof.
Our culture now, with all of our technology and advances, we could not replicate this.
Join us as we look for the truth of what was all of this for? Why did they build these? Be sure to subscribe for the full Chaco Canyon series of videos. We've already put out videos about Pueblo Bonito and Casa Rinconada, which actually Graham Hancock on Netflix's Ancient Apocalypse compared Casa Rinconada to Göbekli Tepe. Cherie and I actually got a chance to meet Graham Hancock in person earlier this year at his Fight for the Past event. Keep watching to find out how you can join us at the next live event. I'm Tom.
And I'm Cherie.
And we're EnjoyTheJourney.Life.
So Chetro Ketl is built starting in the 900s. And this site has a floor plan for 300 rooms. What's real interesting about that is that Pueblo Bonito is immediately next door to us, less than half a mile away, and you can see it right over there. Pueblo Bonito was being built starting in the 800s. So that is already there. It doesn't look like that at the time, because in the 800s there's only about 100 rooms over there, maybe 120. So it's a big structure. It's probably the largest single structure of the 800s time period anywhere in the Southwest, sure. But Chetro Ketl is started in the 900s with a floor plan for 300 rooms. Chetro Ketl is intentionally more than twice the size of Pueblo Bonito from the beginning. Something important is going on here.
Kind of on the outskirts of Chetro Ketl here. You can tell this is another ruin site here. You've got a lot of rocks lifted up over there. It's almost like a circle with a divot in the middle. I don't know what it could have been, another kiva or just more rooms. But these areas are everywhere out here. There's hundreds, if not thousands, of unexcavated sites.
Look at all the kivas. There must be, I can't even count them all. There's so many. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I can see 13 from here, from this point, but wow, I wonder how many there are. We're gonna have to find out. That's wild.
In the 1000s, there's a big expansion at Pueblo Bonito, and they add a couple hundred rooms and once again become the largest single structure in the Southwest. And in the 1100s, there's an expansion over here at Chetro Ketl, and they add a couple hundred rooms and outpace Pueblo Bonito for a second time with about 500 rooms total. These two sites are by far the largest structures with the largest populations, and you're not going to see anything like this again until the 1300s in amongst the Pueblo villages. This is a big deal, and whatever this is, it seems to be going back and forth between these two sites that are in the center of the canyon, that are immediately next door to each other. Neither one of them has enough space for farming. Neither one of them has enough space for resource procurement for the number of people living there. So they have to be getting their things in a different way. In prehistory, especially when you have a situation where people don't have writing, power is all about size. So the bigger the structure, the more work that it takes to create a structure, the more demonstration of power and importance it means. So Pueblo Bonito, very famous, has always been called the largest Pueblo structure in the Southwest. But twice during that time period, Chetro Ketl was bigger. That's important, but nobody seems to be very interested in it. All the focus is always on Pueblo Bonito, all the time. That's the one that everybody cares about. I think a lot of the answers are here. But Chetro Ketl is only half excavated, and all of that excavation took place in the 1920s and 1930s. So there's still a lot of potential, but not a lot of answers.
Was it a competition between the two?
I think that depends on what you believe is actually going on in Chaco and how you believe that the government manages itself. So that's one of those areas where there's lots of different interpretations, and any one of them might be right or wrong or part.
You just keep yourself open to what unfolds.
The only thing that's certain is that this is a really big deal.
So one of the things that Cherie and I have been doing is some amateur ghost hunting. And we have just a few simple things, these copper rods, some call them dowsing rods, divining rods. Whether you believe or not, we've seen enough evidence to believe that there is something to this. So I'm just going to walk toward this kiva to see what these rods do, to see if they open up or crisscross, or we'll just see what happens. Crossing.
That's a strong cross.
Just like we've experienced before. And the crossing means it's not a negative thing from our research, but it means you found something metallic or spiritual energy, water. But we're going to keep testing as many kivas as we can to see if this happens in every one, because that's actually number 7 of all the tests I've done. They've all done the same thing, if you can believe it. So we'll keep doing this, and comment, what do you think of this? Is this legit, or as some people call it, pseudoscience? And but again, we've personally had experiences that can't be explained with these, and these are not expensive, so it's a test you can actually try yourself. Let's move on to another one.
Chetro Ketl was partially excavated, but since that time the wind has blown a lot of dirt back in. All of the accumulation of soil in the southwest comes from the wind. It doesn't come from decaying vegetation and things like that, because we just don't have those sorts of things, except for in the national forest areas and along rivers. So this is actually the second story of the building, but it looks like it's not, because it's filled in from all of this windblown sand. But there is rooms down below us. So you can see this one here. There's 2 roof beams. There's 2 tree trunks embedded in the walls, which held up the first floor roof, and you can see where the branches would then be inserted in the walls and would lay on top of that. So the roofs are built in layers, and we'll look at that in just a minute. But what you can also see here is the most important part of what allows the Chacoans to always stay about 100 years more advanced than everybody else. The Chacoans invent foundations, and that gives us not only the ability to build multiple stories in height and have it still standing more than 1,000 years later, it also gives us a complete floor plan for every single building, because the foundations are built first, and then the ground floor, and then the upper floors. So some of the upper floors, the 2nd and 3rd story levels, are actually from the 11 and 1200s time periods. They're not from the 900s, but the foundations go back to the 900s.
Somewhere they learned that having a foundation was a good thing, and that's probably why some of these walls are still standing instead of sinking into the sand. So you said the Navajo, when they came afterward, they did not want to inhabit the complete structures out of respect.
Yeah, it's very common that tribal groups that recognize that something is not related to them, that they don't want to cause disturbance, that there's a lot of ideas that there are spirits living there and they don't want to disturb them. They don't want to have negative repercussions take place. And there are different belief systems that exist today that maybe have their roots a couple hundred years ago in some of these ideas where, There's certain ways that you deal with death and burial and things like that that are highly taboo and in fact completely forbidden for people to talk about too. And when people are worried about those kinds of things because they have those beliefs already, they may want to avoid having a situation where they could inadvertently cause some kind of distress or disturbance to existing sites. But they also, at the same time, recognize that there is still a whole lot of really good material that can be reused. And so if you go to a wall that's already collapsed and you take those stones and you use them to rebuild your own structure, that isn't bothering anybody. But maybe getting into an interior room that still has an original ceiling, maybe then you'd be crossing a line that wouldn't be culturally appropriate.
Locked to protect fragile walls.
Oh yeah, there's like a ceiling, another level underneath this.
I guess they don't want people walking in there to...
No.
Might not be safe.
If you come over to this room here, there's a little door that is definitely not prehistoric, and a piece of plexiglass that is also not prehistoric. But the reason this is here is because there is actually, if you can block enough of
the light,
the glare and the light from everybody's nose prints, you can see the layers of the floor material. So there's a room underneath.
Yeah.
There's a roof on that room, which is the floor of this story of the building. Chetro Ketl has a whole series of rooms along the back wall here where there are intact or partially intact ceilings, and that means that whatever objects were left in those rooms when the people who lived here left, those things were perfectly preserved. So decay comes from soil and bugs and, you know, water and stuff like that getting in to something that has filled in. But a room that has a ceiling on it that has not collapsed, nothing has filled in. And the wind blows so much soil and sand up against the walls of these structures that as soon as somebody is not living here taking care of them, all the doorways immediately fill in with silt. And from that point on, everything inside of that room is just preserved. So this is why the Southwest has been so famous for archaeology for such a long time, because this is what preserves basketry and clothing pieces and feathers and food items. You don't find those things in archaeology in other parts of the country because they don't survive. You have to, you know, do chemical tests to identify them because there's no physical items left behind. Here, you go into some of these rooms and you get baskets that are full of corn cobs, or you get objects that are left behind in place. That's what has made the Southwest so famous for archaeology for such a long time, and so controversial because all of those things, in some cases, depending on when they were excavated and how they were excavated and who was in charge of the project, some of them have disappeared. Some of them have gone to private collections. Some of them have gone to other places around the world and nobody even knows where they are, let alone how to get a hold of them. But some of them also were done in a more controlled way. And so those are available for museums and for research and for things like that.
What we're going to do is we're going to keep asking the questions, because the more we see, the more questions we discover, the more mysteries, but somebody has the answer. And we're super curious, and I know a lot of you are as well. So join us as we look for the truth of what was all of this for? Why did they build these? And if you have an idea or have a theory, let us know in the comments. So back to the pottery, do you know anything about the ritual of making a piece of pottery and then breaking it on purpose?
Yeah, that's really common, prehistorically as well as during the historic period with the Pueblos. In the Pueblo villages, the way that they were documented during the Spanish times and later, the people who made all the pots were women. So pottery was a female activity. And we don't have any reason to think that that's not the case prehistorically, but we also don't have any direct evidence of who was making the pots. But a lot of the times, people who are potters will talk about making the pot, and they talk about it in the same kinds of terms when they talk about their family. So making a pot is like making a baby. It takes a long time, and you have to be really careful, and you have to do everything right, or else something might happen that makes it come out the way that you don't want it to. And then you fire it, and that's sort of like that it's being born, and then you use it, and so it has a lifetime. And then when it breaks, maybe you don't want to just throw the pieces away because it meant something to you. It was part of your family. And so we see them regularly taking broken pieces of pottery and using them in place of chinking stones in the walls. That's a way of making that pot immortal. We see them regularly taking pieces of pottery and reshaping them into things like jewelry or some other kind of object, sometimes a tool that can be used, sometimes something decorative. And one of the real interesting things that we see is that there are certain places where there seem to be some type of shrine or place of offering, and they will take pots that may or may not have something inside of them, and they deliberately go to that place and they break the pot and they leave all the pieces there, and presumably whatever was inside, whether that offering is something that doesn't leave any trace behind, like water or corn pollen, which are definitely considered sacred substances, or maybe it had food in it, but animals came and ate all the food, and so we don't see any of that. But a lot of times what we see is that there's a broken pot, but it's all in one place, and those are usually at these places that can be identified as shrines. Some of those shrines have been in use for more than 800 years. There are places that modern day Pueblo people go and leave the same types of offerings that have also been used all the way back to the 1200s. So it's a pretty interesting practice, and definitely one that has survived for at least some of the Pueblos.
Wow. This is roped off right here, and I just want to go out there so bad. You can see pottery from here.
Oh yeah,
This is probably tons of findings here.
big chunks of pottery out there.
Yeah.
They don't want people out there. There's another little blue speck down there as well.
It's like completely like squared. Look at that.
Oh yeah. How about that? And it's not plastic.
No. Where do you leave stuff like this?
Just right here.
Just back in the ground?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
For somebody else to find.
Okay.
Here's more.
Look at that.
And we will leave all of these right where we found them.
I'm gonna put them over here with it.
Those little pieces, those are the ones that lay on top of the tree trunks and make a surface.
Yeah.
So there's lots of preserved wood in the building.
Got more exposed wood right here. We've had some people comment on videos that there's no way this is 1,000-year-old wood, but you'd be surprised. There's so little moisture out here in the desert. Everything lasts a lot longer. It just does not decay as fast. So I can assure you these are original. Some massive logs coming out of the wall right there. And then you find these random logs built in like this. Doesn't seem like there's any rhyme or reason to it. I guess here was another window that's been walled up. Maybe it was meant to be just a part of the support there, and it just extended
Looks like it's, extended part of the ceiling on the inside.
Yeah.
So probably just more support. That's what I would think.
This is a great example right here. You can see the difference of this design, and then look at this inner wall. Like, this was a window, and then all of a sudden you got these huge rocks built up right here. Do you have a passion for the truth? Do you have a passion for discovering ancient lost civilizations? Then join us at the Quest for Ancient Civilizations event, December 5th through 7th in Scottsdale, Arizona. Join Cherie and I and these ancient civilizations experts: Jimmy Corsetti, David Hatcher Childress, Hugh Newman, William Henry, A.J. Gentile, Gary Buechler, J.J. Ainsworth, Dan Richards, Michael Collins, and more. That's right, join us here in December in Arizona. It's gonna be warm. If you can't make it in person, you can watch online from anywhere in the world. Join us.
So this wall along here, if you look really close, you can see that there are pillars with what used to be, perhaps, open spaces. So here's the edge of a pillar right here. And then it goes across to here. So this is the next pillar. So this
Was filled in.
was at one time open, but now it's filled in. And a lot of times you can see that the fill was done at a different time period than the original pillars, because it doesn't match. It's not the right style. It's a different pattern of the pieces of stone. So it comes from a different time period.
Looks like this was a larger window. You can see the joint. Then they filled it in and put a smaller window in.
So Chetro Ketl at one time had this long wall that faced over the plaza and down the canyon, and it had these big openings, but then later on, about 150 years later, the people living here decided they didn't want them anymore and filled them in. And in some cases, they actually built cross walls to divide up this long hallway into individual room spaces. So this is one of those things where people always want to know why somebody would do that, which is a reasonable question. And of course, we don't have a way to know why people do things, because that's not something physical that you can pick up and study. It's pretty clear that someone made a decision and it had a permanent effect on the structure and the way that the structure looked. Because imagine coming to Chetro Ketl as a visitor and coming into the plaza, and the first thing that you see is this huge colonnade wall. That would have really made an impact.
Yeah.
And Chetro Ketl is
Powerful.
unique. It's colonnade walls are not common in this area. They're not found in other Anasazi regions. They are something that normally we think of in Mexico.
Are you like going back to like a Mayan kind of thing, or?
They are most commonly associated with the Mayans.
Really? Yeah, that's one of the questions we've got is, was there active trade with the Mayans at some point?
There is no clear indications of active trade, but there is very clear indications of active trade into at least Chihuahua. So we know there's trade with Mexico.
Okay.
How far south does it go is a big question. How extensive is it is a big question. All we have are items that we know have to come from Mexico and are not native to here, but
Cacao.
are found here, and that includes things like cocoa. It includes things like macaws and macaw feathers. It includes things like copper bells, which, remember, there's no metal of any kind in this society, so copper bells are a really big deal. But it's a limited amount of things.
Yeah, the hearing about the macaws just blows my mind. Did they just trade for feathers to bring here, or was it actual live birds?
No. They are bringing live birds. And macaws are an interesting bird. So my husband is a bird guy. He really likes birds. He likes parrots. He's always wanted parrots. So when I heard about the macaws, I was like, I've got to find out about this, because maybe he'll be intrigued by this. And macaws can live in captivity for up to 120 years.
Wow.
In fact, when you go and buy a parrot of that type or of other long-lived parrot types, there are actually legal requirements that you provide for them in your will, because they are going to outlive you unless you treat them badly or they get sick. So you go back to prehistoric times, they don't live for 120 years, but they do vastly outlive their owners, because human lifespan during this time period is sort of like what it is in Europe. It's about 30 to 40-ish, and very rarely people live longer than that. And most women are actually 15 to 25, but nobody wants to talk about that because that's all about the dangers of childbirth and things like that. So these birds, if they live to 60 years old, they're way outliving their owners. And they are buried with grave goods, just like people are. And they are buried in very formal ways, but they're definitely harvesting the feathers throughout their whole lifespan as well. So it's not just the feathers, it's also the birds. Chetro Ketl has more buried macaws than any other excavated site. And guess who has the second highest number of macaw burials?
Pueblo Bonito.
No. Salmon Ruins.
Oh.
Our site.
Wow.
Has. Now again, most of the sites are not excavated. But out of excavated sites, the highest number of macaws is here. The second highest number of macaws is Salmon Ruins.
This one is really well excavated.
Yeah.
Probably more than any other great kiva here in Chaco Canyon.
So I have a question. This one right here has a bench in it. That means whatever it was used for, it used a bench. You know, the bench had a purpose. Some say they laid different things on top of it and beat it like drums, but that would make sense why there would be a bench. So there are some theories that they use them as like saunas, use, you know, hot coals of burning firewood. Where would they get the firewood? Maybe there were trees back then, I don't know. There's some down by the river, but
this is the Great Kiva. And did you guys go to Aztec?
yes.
Yes.
Okay, so at Aztec, you can go inside the Great Kiva because it's been reconstructed. It was reconstructed in 1921 based on the existing structure that was discovered during excavation in 1919, but none of the roof material was actually present to observe. So they made it much taller and probably much fancier than it would have actually been. But the truth is, we have never excavated a Great Kiva that had intact roof material. We know that they have roofs because a lot of times the roofs have burned and have left permanent marks on the sides, and that red color that goes all the way around the room is from roof material falling in and burning against the side of the wall and oxidizing the iron in the sandstone. So the Great Kivas have some kind of roof, but guess what? Nobody knows what they look like because every single drawing and every single attempt to reconstruct reconstruct a great kiva roof was made by taking a small kiva with an intact roof and making it bigger. Nobody actually knows what these are supposed to look like or how much of the interior is covered.
Look at these structures inside the Great Kiva. That's got a much smaller hole. It's like perfectly round. And that one, it's a larger hole. Like maybe they were meant for different purposes.
Can you tell me what this long piece is that's crumbling and how that was created?
Yeah, that almost looks like plaster or concrete, so we don't know if that's been reconstructed or not. It's definitely cracking a lot, so if it has been reconstructed, it was a long time ago.
But maybe back in the 1930s.
Sure.
They were excavating.
But it's definitely like a lower, this side's a lower level than that side. At least it appears that way. We don't know if this is taken all the way down to the foundation or not. So many questions.
The problem with fire in these sites is that you can tell that it happened, and sometimes if you have more modern excavation techniques, you can actually tell when it happened. But you can't tell if it was on purpose. And you can't tell if it was caused by lightning or, you know, some other kind of natural thing. You can just tell that it has happened.
And they did use fire.
They did use fire. I mean, they had, you know, fire is a technology that people have had all through since the Ice Age. But, you know, whether or not it was burned intentionally is anybody's guess.
Do you know what these were used for?
Yeah, so the one in the center is the fire pit. And that's usually a formally constructed type of space because you want to contain the fire. You don't want it to get out of control. And then the two rectangles that are on either side are found in great kivas. They're called floor vaults. A lot of people call them foot drums because in the historic and modern day pueblos, where there was a development that started in the 1400s that led to the kachinas and the figures that wear masks and do dances and things like that are part of the modern day Pueblo belief system. That all starts in the 1400s, and they're used as gigantic drums that you actually stand on top of the boards and stomp your feet, and it makes this drumming sound. So these do exist in some, but not all, of the modern day pueblos, and that's how they're used in the ones where they exist. But there's also some real interesting Spanish observations, which may or may not be correct, but it's sort of a stupid thing for them to make up, so it's silly to imagine that they just made it up out of nowhere. Right. The Spanish say that they observed some of these as a place to start seeds so that you could extend the growing season, because sometimes, especially in the mountains, you might not have enough time to grow a long season vegetable crop like corn, and so you have to start the seeds a few weeks too early, so they would fill them with dirt and plant seeds in them. That's a real interesting observation. Another is that potentially some of them look like they're burned on the inside and maybe were being used as some kind of sweat lodge type of situation. In fact, this one has stairs leading to the top, so this one you would think of maybe more as a foot drum, but that one does not have stairs, and it has a bench on the inside, like as if you're supposed to sit in it.
Interesting.
And it's red, so
it's
been exposed to fire.
Yeah. So these circular stones right here were used. There's supposed to be 4 of them, one for each 4 corners, and that would support the pillars that would support the whole structure and the roof. But what's interesting is, like, those are huge. How did they carry those? How did they work with them? If anybody knows, I'm all ears. I'm open to all theories.
Well,
Love
they're
them all.
shaped like a wheel, so they probably just rolled them.
Yeah. Pretty heavy. How'd you pick it up to roll it? And how'd you roll it? How far'd you roll it from?
Right. They likely got all the building materials from that cliff behind us here.
Yeah. So we love hearing all your theories, so please share.
So what you can see from the little room over there is that it has its own staircase, and it's coming through an opening that is sometimes called a T-shaped doorway, which I think is a really stupid terminology, since, you know, Roman letters don't mean anything to people of this time period, but it's unfortunately a terminology that has existed for over 100 years, so we're stuck with it. So what's interesting is that in Chaco sites, there's only two places that you find T-shaped doorways. One is entering the Great Kiva from the antechamber, and the other is on some but not all of the rooms that connect up to the plaza. So the first doorway, or sometimes the first two doorways, going inside from some but not all of the plaza rooms. So it does look like the person who is coming down that staircase maybe has something special about them, that they get to use this kind of doorway. Because having them tied very closely to just the Great Kivas and rooms around the plaza really indicates a specialized use for that shape. And so what we might guess is that normal people like us walk across the roof and go down a big ladder to get inside, and then we go and sit somewhere on the bench. And you can see that there's 3 levels of bench here, so this is made to accommodate a good 300 to 500 people, which is, you know,
a spiral, because it looks like they kind of go up and down.
Some of them aren't exactly even, but it's possible that some of that is from Park Service reconstruction. It's hard to tell sometimes how much of that is original that's been stabilized and how much of it is Park Service reconstruction. But then, you know, because think about like when you go to a regular church, right, like a modern church. So the church service doesn't start when you walk in. Like usually you want to get there a little bit early, because, you know, sometimes people kind of like give you dirty looks if you get there late. Right? So you want to get there early, and then you go and you like find your favorite seat, or you go and talk to people, you know. And then so more people come in, and what happens? All of a sudden you hear the person on the piano or on the organ, and you're like, oh, things are about to start. We should go sit down. Like, you know, you make your kids be quiet, and you go and you sit where it is that you start getting serious. You know, you start getting serious because it's time to start, right? And then after that is when the person who's in charge makes an appearance.
Makes a presentation.
And many times they come out of a little room and come down a staircase.
That's true.
To the altar.
Yeah.
All right. So I think that there's a really good possibility that that's what we're looking at here, and that the only people who are allowed to use these T-shaped doorways are the people in charge of the ceremonies, and possibly, if other people are included, people who have higher status in the community for some reason, people who are being recognized in some way. And so that makes me suspect that the rooms around us that go into interior spaces, that those T-shaped doorways are telling people that it's off limits. And so maybe the reason for the little kind of benches that are down at the lower part of the door is so that you sit down and wait for someone to come and tell you that it's okay. It's like when you go to the doctor and you have to sit out in the waiting room, and then they come out and they say, okay, it's your turn. Maybe that's where you sit. Or some people think that maybe there's water in jugs, or, you know, some other kind of thing that is left there so that you have access to it from the plaza, but you don't go inside. Maybe you just need a chaperone. Maybe this is for people who are visitors. So you just don't get to go there unless somebody goes with you, right? And of course we don't know anything about that actual use. All we see is the doorway, that it's only in certain places,
right? That
it's, you know, something
you just have to draw up conclusions and keep it a guess.
Right. And then the other thing that's kind of fun about Chetro Ketl is these little niches that are in the walls. So you see these little openings, these little square holes.
Yeah.
Right? And they kind of look like somebody has maybe measured the distance between them. So each of those had items inside that were rare or valuable, or at the very least not from around here. They could include things like necklaces or jewelry or beads, or
sacred pieces.
Maybe things that are carved, maybe maybe feathers from exotic birds, maybe, different kinds of things like that. And all of them had stuff in them. So that's kind of interesting. They may have been left as some kind of offering or as some kind of way for people to, mark their spot. Maybe that represented a family. And so, you put your things in the niche and then that's your spot where your family sits for the next couple of generations or something like that. We really don't know.
Right.
But there is something else that's really interesting that maybe throws all of that off. There's 28.
I was going to ask you how many there were. Okay.
There's a really high number here.
Uh-huh.
Now, when you have the development in societies of mathematics and calculation, before writing exists, you have to do all of your calculation using your fingers and your toes. So everything should always be multiples of 5s and 10s. So 28 doesn't work. There's no 5 or 10 based counting system where 28 is a number.
I heard something about some six-toed.
Well, we'll talk
people
about
here.
that later.
Okay.
That still wouldn't add up. It'd still be 24.
Right. So, we know that they're paying a lot of attention to the cycle of the sun, and that this is still important to them for those 4 holidays associated with the sun, the solstices and the equinoxes. What if they're also paying attention to something that has to do with the moon?
Moon, 28 days.
The lunar month.
You get 13 28-day lunar months in a year, and that would be great, except that the Earth is not cooperating because it's not traveling at quite the right speed.
It's not perfect. The numbers are not perfect.
And so that's why we have leap year.
Right.
Right? Well, so a lot of cultures realized that they could calculate time more accurately based on the phases of the moon and have 28-day lunar months, but that they had to account for those extra days or the whole calendar would slide around and take place at the wrong time of year. And so a lot of times they would have 2 or 3 extra days that are outside of time, that are magical days.
I've heard of these days.
So this is something that the Celts did. This is something that a lot of Greek and Roman calendars did prior to Catholicism. This is something that you see all
13-month calendar that we
world.
should have so we can understand our world.
Exactly. So maybe this is an indication that the people in Chetro Ketl have a religious practice that is more about the moon than about the sun. So, just an idea.
Yeah.
There's no way to prove it.
No.
There never will be a way to prove it, unfortunately.
But
it is
great guess.
Absolutely not accepted by any other archaeologists or tribal groups.
We're standing in a location right here where there's multiple kivas all together, even on the side of the building over here, and they're all different. They all have unique characteristics, and we don't know what they were used for. There's so many theories for why they could have been used. Could have been celebrations or coming of age, or some even say maybe like rain dances or healings, all kinds of things. So we really don't know.
Are a series of small kivas, and we talked about small kivas a little bit at Una Vida because small kivas do not exist in Chacoan sites until about the mid-1000s. And so when they appear, they are all put in a very short period of time, and they become very important for some reason. But typically, the addition of small kivas in Chacoan buildings that existed before that time, the small kiva is built inside of an existing room or sometimes attached to the outside of an existing room. So you see this one up here where there's this curved wall that's sticking out. That's one of those. That's a kiva that was built in conjunction with something already existing, a space that's already existing. But these are out in the plaza, which is a public space that everyone has access to. Now, the argument for small kivas has always been that they represent the development of the clan system within the modern-day pueblos. And I'm not saying that's not the case, but it's much more believable when you have a kiva inside a room that the only people who have access to are the family who lives in the rooms around that room. That is a much more believable private family kiva. These are out in the plaza where anyone can get into them. Not only are they all built at the same time and all right next to each other in the plaza, each one is built differently. So this one has a bench that goes around with an open space and little pillars. This one has a bench that goes around with no open space and no pillars.
This one is interesting because it's shaped, we've been calling it the peanut kiva. It's shaped like a peanut. So it's possible that this was two and this wall is no longer there.
This one is a double kiva. It is very intentionally connected in the center with these very carefully made hard corners coming in.
I've never seen one like
I haven't
this.
either.
Like a little bean.
Like an infinity sign.
A peanut.
That's why I said a peanut.
Yeah.
The way these are built, it goes in, and they could have had, you can see a circular area right here. You see that?
Right.
So maybe this was a kiva and this was some kind of exterior room, because some of these kivas have rooms attached to them.
Kivas are round. All the kivas that we've looked at have been round. Square kivas don't become a thing until the 1400s. And only in Arizona. So why is this square on the inside? By making this square on the inside, this is no longer a sacred space. This is a kiva that has been converted into not a kiva. Why would they do that? Well, there are actually some people who use square kivas. They just aren't Anasazi people. In the southern part of Arizona, you have the Holcomb. And in the southern part of New Mexico, you have the Mogollon. And both of those groups developed through the basket maker period into large village communities, just like up here, but they are separate cultures. And they're all trading with one another. So people from Chaco are trading with the Mogollon and the Holcomb all the time. And the Mogollon and the Holcomb are closer to Mexico, so they have access to things from Chihuahua and Sonora in Mexico. And they use square kivas. So maybe this is an attempt by the people of Chetro Ketl to engage the Holcomb and the Mogollon for trade. They have guest rooms all along the outside of the plaza. Because remember, when people come as traders, they're going to move into your house. And maybe you don't really want that. Maybe you don't really know them or trust them, or they're from another place, then you don't know if that's okay. So you don't want them staying in your house. You want them to have their own rooms, but you want those rooms to be accessible so you can get their trade goods. And then maybe while they're here, they need to have some kind of ritual activity. And so you have a variety of different types of kivas to accommodate their needs. That is not the great kiva, because that's your kiva, and you want to make sure that nobody goes in there and does weird things that might make your gods mad, especially during the drought.
So it's a way to be more welcoming to these other tribes, bring more goods and stuff here, and increase your elevation in society.
Yeah, I think so.
That's a great theory. I mean,
I think that is the most realistic way to look at it and the most practical way to look at it. There's a lot of ways that people have interpreted all of these different things that are not at all relatable or practical. I'm not interested in any of those explanations. People of the past need to be studied as people. You got to make them real. You got to make them believable. So that's what I try to do.
Cherie's gonna try the copper rods here at the Grand Kiva.
And it's super windy. And they are pointing at this kiva.
What will they do? They're doing exactly what they've done at all the other kivas.
Am I allowed to move a hand up so it has free movement? There we go.
And they say if they're pointing the same direction, that can indicate like a pipe or something. Here at Chetro Ketl, they have evidence, and they've dug down and they've found proof that the ancient Puebloans, the Chacoans here at Chaco Canyon, they were building foundations back over 1,000 years ago. Do you believe it? Well, there's proof.
Some different construction styles, but also down to the level of where the foundations are. The problem over here is that it's reconstructed because you have to look at the time period of when things are going on, okay? Chetro Ketl is being excavated in the 1920s and 30s. And the United States enters World War II at the end of the 1930s, and everybody who is young enough and strong enough to go to war has to go to war. So all the people who are excavating these sites are sent to the military, and they leave all of their excavations open to the elements. Well, this is a desert, so that should be okay, right? Except that at least once a year we have flash floods. So in the early 40s, there was a flash flood that comes down through that section of the canyon where you can see it all slopes right down to here. And it completely engulfed Chetro Ketl and filled up all the rooms that had been excavated or partially excavated.
No.
And all of the mud mortar in the walls dissolved and the walls collapsed.
Crumbled.
So lots of reconstruction throughout all of this area.
Right.
Reconstruction that was based on photography so that it represents accurate depictions of the styles and the colors and things like that. But reconstructions.
Now let's try the divining rods again.
Energy. No, I can't see. Sure enough.
Yeah.
Can you go further? Push it out further. Huh, interesting.
Let me turn a little bit.
Oh.
Just crossing a little more.
Yeah.
I'll turn this way. Wow, look at that. Similar to the other room.
Wow.
So I feel like it is indicating, yeah, maybe again toward the Great Kiva over here. You know what? Look at what I'm looking straight at right now.
Where are you looking?
Look straight ahead of me in the wall. Look what I'm exactly lined up with.
That wood
beam
really
is identical to what I'm looking at.
wow.
Coincidence?
I don't think so. We should go find some more.
You're gonna be a believer by the time you're done watching these videos. Cherie is going to test this. Hopefully that metal won't throw anything off.
Oh, right. That's good so far. Can only go so far. Oh.
Interesting. That's right at
along
about
that wall.
the breach, which is kind of rounded.
Yeah, it is. It's a. Well, look down here. You can see that it's completely around the Kiva.
Oh yeah.
Or this side stops at the Kiva. Looks like it's walled off, but it continues around that way.
Yeah, this is
Wow.
interesting down here.
Yeah.
But this is the most support structure we've seen here yet that they've come in here and added so it didn't collapse.
Big tower Kiva on the 3rd story up here.
Look at that.
Oh, wow.
This is actually not completed until the 1200s, which is why you see yet another style of masonry, these big blocky pieces of stones that are not as easy to shape and control as the thinner, flatter stones from the eastern end of the canyon. They're starting to use this sandstone here instead of sandstone that has to be brought down from the other end. Maybe they've run out of it. Maybe they just feel like, why aren't we using this resource that's right here? But this sandstone is not as easy to work with, doesn't look as nice, and it's not as sturdy. So sometimes it falls apart. So in the 11 and 1200s, when you start seeing these bigger, blockier pieces come in, you also start to see the invention of buttressing. So this is really interesting because in Europe, at exactly the same time period, they're solving exactly the same problem in the same way. But in Europe, buttressing becomes an architectural detail. It becomes something artistic. It becomes something that people expect to see. And even when they learn how to build cathedrals and castles without needing buttresses, they still build them because people like them. In Chaco, that's not how it works. In Chaco, you don't want somebody to visit and realize that some of the walls are unstable. So your buttress sticks out and looks like it doesn't belong. So they build the connecting walls to complete the room, and they just don't put a door in it because it's not a room, it's a buttress. Nobody wants to live in there because it's already collapsed once. It's not a room, but it looks like a room, and nobody asks questions if it looks like a room. They figure, oh, somebody just comes down from upstairs.
Oh.
Interesting.
We'll see more of these over at Pueblo Bonito, but here's one of those intriguing corner openings that goes through. And we just don't get to see very many at Chetro Ketl because most of the 3rd story isn't visible anymore. But they're still present in some of the walls.
So we've tried these on several kivas. Let's try a regular room, or what we perceive as a regular room out here to see how these...
It's a T window, or a T entrance exit.
Right, so we think the T entrances, we believe, are for more of the
it's starting to cross.
well-off members of the tribe. Tribal elders, possibly. Oh, see? So that's finally...
You know what? If it wants you to go that way, go that way.
Yeah, you know what? I think it's pointing at that big kiva in the middle.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Oh, look at this.
Huh. Okay, I'm losing you over here.
Now it's crossing. And wow. Well, I'll swing over that way again to see what happens. Look at that. that is the direction of the big Kiva in this complex. So
pretty cool.
That's interesting.
I want to get in one of those kivas.
And here's the main cliffside wall of Chetro Ketl.
Look at the design here. They were very intentional.
Right. You know, each of these is built a little different. It's like a little more decorative.
A little more precise. They're like really tightening in on that being precise. They're getting more intentional. I guess they cared a lot about curb appeal, modern day curb appeal, you know, curb aesthetics.
Like I was mentioning on another video, that I would like to live in a house like this. This is beautiful.
Yeah, and it's solid.
Right.
Look how long it's withstand like all of nature's craziness.
And we notice from all these sites that the cliffside wall is the most protected and the one that stands the tallest.
So, in addition to those spirals that have light and shadow anomalies that happen sort of with a combination of natural features and directly encouraged features, you also get each building with one really long, really straight wall. And for sites that have not been excavated, we're not always sure exactly where that wall is located, so those alignments have not been identified in unexcavated sites. In excavated sites or partially excavated sites, however, these walls become really intriguing because it's a lot of work to do this. It's obviously very important to them. This wall is aligned to an incredibly obscure and complicated and lengthy celestial observation related to the moon. It is called the lunar standstill. The lunar standstill is essentially the same idea as the solstice is with the sun, except that it applies to the moon. The problem is that the sun appears to move incrementally across the horizon at a very slow pace, a predictable pace, a pace that repeats every year. And so once you figure out that there is something going on with the movement of the sun from your observation location, it's very, very easy to identify where the solstice and the equinox points are located. The moon is not behaving that way. The moon is traveling around the Earth, and both of them are traveling around the sun, and they are all traveling at different speeds. And that means that the moon does not go incrementally across the horizon every night when it comes up. No, it does not. It actually jumps around in a completely random fashion that does not make any discernible pattern whatsoever for 9 years and 3 months. And then it comes up at the southernmost point that it will ever come up over the horizon. And then for the next 9 years and 3 months, it bounces around all over the place and does a totally random thing. And then it comes up at the northernmost point that it will ever come up over the horizon. And those two locations are called the lunar standstills. And that cycle takes 18.5 years to complete. Which means that for a human being to observe that cycle and recognize a pattern, they have to live for a minimum of 36 years. But not really, because you can't start making observations as a child. You have to get to a certain point before someone can teach you to do this. So you actually have to live for at least maybe 45 years. You're pushing the boundaries of the Anasazi lifespan at 45. Okay? So this is something that people figure out. It's so important to them that they will build entire buildings to create this visible alignment once every 9 years and 3 months. We don't know why it's so important. But I can tell you that this has been verified. It is not just an idea. It absolutely works. The park does have lunar standstill observations where you can come out at night as a special occasion. You have to camp here and you can see this happen. It does still happen. there are several other sites that also do this. This is a Chacoan interest. And probably the most spectacular of those is also considered the northernmost Chacoan outlier, and that's Chimney Rock in Pagosa Springs in Colorado. Chimney Rock is built overlooking a natural geological formation where on the lunar standstill, the moon comes up between two natural pillars of stone and is viewed from the plaza of the site. Yeah.
We were just looking at that for full moon coming up here, thinking about getting tickets.
Yeah.
But we just discovered that lunar standstill, and it's like happening. It's happening now, right? Coming up now. It takes an
incredibly long period of time for people to recognize. The way that I have explained it is not astronomically correct, but it is the only way that you can condense it and make it relatable for people who are not professional astronomers. And it's close enough to what's happening that it's actually a reasonable explanation.
And it's 9 years what?
It's 9, and it's an 18-and-a-half-year cycle. So it's 9 years and about 3 months is the way that it breaks down. Yeah.
Interesting.
And I have had some people who were astronomers who said, well, that's not really how it works, but it's close enough that it probably would make sense to people. And so that's how I explain it. But I also think that this leads a lot of support to the idea that the 28 niches in the Great Kiva are lunar niches.
I believe that.
Yes.
That's what I would lean more towards.
You can see places where there's pieces of wood that have holes drilled in them all along here. All of these little openings, these are some kind of ventilation holes. They're right underneath of the roof line. They're kind of like windows, but we think most people aren't tall enough to look out of them as windows. So unless they're standing on something, it's not really a window. It's more of a light and air vent for the interior rooms. And these are also sometimes built with direct alignments through them from room to room. Oh my God. But all of these pieces of wood that have holes drilled in them, that is the dendrochronology sample. That is how we get accurate dates on construction of masonry styles and of different rooms or different parts of the building. When we say this part was built in the 900s and this part is built in the 1000s, it comes from these dendrochronology samples that are taken from the original pieces of wood that are still embedded and still preserved. So you can see all of those. Look at all of this detail here. There's nobody who can tell me that this type of design is not meant to be seen. This is a use of a skill that is beyond what is necessary or practical to solve a problem. This is very intentionally made to be beautiful. This is a way of showing off your ability as a construction expert.
The detailed work. The layering.
I like that one random.
Yeah, isn't that funny? Look at that little
Was
round.
it supposed to be a log there or something?
No, it's a round piece of sandstone, and maybe we might want to think that because this back wall is aligned to the lunar standstill,
that has to
that is some
lined
kind
up
of
with something important.
lunar
look at that. Do they not have those anywhere else?
Not that I've observed, but I wouldn't, I mean, there's millions
Wow.
of pieces of stone in just this building. So
Sure.
I wouldn't want to commit to that, but not that I have observed. This is something that is unique and again, meant to be seen, something visible in the back wall.
There's that, there's a site right next to Chetro Ketl that is like up against the cliff.
Yeah, yeah.
That when we were on tour with Tori from Salmon Ruins,
Yeah.
she was saying like this one's really confusing because it's not really up to Chaco standards in terms of building.
It's a very fascinating. That's Hillside Ruin, and Talus Unit. Hillside Ruin is a little ways further away, but anyway, when they looked at the layout of that building, this is just too fascinating. This I learned from, I think, John Stein. And when computers came into being in such a way that we could use them in such a way, we started realizing some of the things that were going on. This is probably all over the world in different structures, but certainly in Chaco, starting to learn, oh, there are patterns here that you can't see except like from the air, and you can see them now with a computer, you know. Well, Talus Unit is interesting because the guy who did the excavation there, Edgar Hewitt, called it a separate building, but the underneath the ground, the foundations are connected. Now,
Really?
if you walk out, if you're looking at Talus Unit here, Chetro Ketl is over here, and you walk out so that now Chetro Ketl is right here, and you look at the walls that now come to this point, you'll find that every one of those walls will line up with the walls over here.
Okay.
If you took that building and you had a swivel and you went like that, it would fit right here. So it looks like its original structure was designed to be here, and at some point they decided to move it, not put it here, but put it over here, but they kept exactly the same structure. And putting it over here would be different than putting it on the foundation here. So evidently it's not as good over here, but for some reason it was important to be over there, and there is evidence for a way up out of that structure, a ladder that evidently went up the side of the cliff, and you can see where it was tied in different places.
Okay.
And so that was a way up that would meet the roads that go right up to Alto. And the roads that come in from the north come right to Alto. And then they fan down to the cliff between Bonito, well, between, where you go up behind Quetzal. That's one of their ways. And several ways now as you come to the east. And that ladder system was one of them. There's further east too, there's stairways even, but that's, it looks like that structure was put there to support that. So, I mean, it was quite an undertaking.
The masonry in each room is very well made Chacoan masonry that could easily be built anywhere between the 900s and the 1200s. But everything else about this building breaks all the rules of Chacoan architecture that we know to exist. There's no foundation, there's no organized floor plan, the rooms are very haphazardly added to one another. It's built right up against the cliff, what the Chacoans never do. Look at how far away the back wall of Chetro Ketl is in comparison.
And what were these rooms used for? I mean, it's like the passageways, people just like, surely not like at home where people just walk through your home.
Well, that's kind of the thing, is this is really weird looking. It just doesn't fit. It doesn't match up. It's so narrow. It's not very believable.
Another tribe coming through and copying?
It could be. That's one of the ideas that has been proposed, is that this is maybe, non-Chacoan Anasazi people are trying to figure out how to build stuff or try to figure out how to copy the styles of masonry.
Yeah.
Maybe, maybe because they don't live here, they don't know that it's not safe to build right against the cliff because there's rock slides all the time. That could certainly be a possibility. I don't know.
And those holes,
so that would be for pieces of wood that would be part of a platform or a roof type of construction.
and those like stairs or passageways.
Yeah, it's like some weird little openings and stuff. Very, very strange. Everything about it just doesn't really
It's like such an anomaly. So many anomalies.
I mean, people have come up with potential explanations which are reasonable, but there's always something about them that doesn't quite work.
Yeah.
Like, for example, people have said, well, maybe this is where you put your guests. Okay, sure. But why would you want your guests to sleep in rooms where the rocks might fall on them and crush them in the middle of the night? That doesn't seem like it makes any sense.
It's for the in-laws.
Right, yeah. So that's another one that comes up a lot. It's like,
group, like say from Mesa Verde, came and built all this, considering they're used to being
right. They're used to being close to the cliffs. So that's one of the ideas, and I think that there's some potential with that. That the question that I have about that is, would the people in Chetro Ketl want to have somebody building something that isn't quite right this close to their house?
True.
Because it would be a reflection on them.
Wouldn't it? You know,
Yeah.
I'm not sure. So it's not that that's a bad idea. It's just I'm not sure if they would be okay with that. And instead, I look more at the haphazardness of the different styles of masonry that are run up right next to each other. I don't think that this building was built with a plan.
What's this right here?
Yeah, there's
Wall.
yeah, there's like something there's an upstairs Kiva, and it needs some support, and it's just like it's in a really weird location. I have suspicions that what's going on here is that starting in the 900s, the Chacoans have already built a number of outlier villages, which in my belief are not inhabited by Chacoans, but by the local Anasazi moving in. And those people don't know how to do masonry that looks Chacoan, but they do have a building to maintain. They do have upkeep that they need to do, that they're responsible for. And the Chacoans have a standard, but they haven't developed the technology to meet that standard. So they're always coming here bothering the Chacoans because they need help. They need a repair. The roof collapsed. Their wife had a baby and they need a new room. People are using small kivas now and we want some too. And so the Chacoans are like, okay, no more of this. So what are you going to do? Maybe you invite one person from each of those outliers to be trained how to build walls of that time period. And you have a workshop and you teach them how to build a wall
like
in a place.
Masonry school.
And then as each generation goes by, you have added more outliers. So you need to have more training sessions, and then different styles develop, and then small kivas develop, and then upstairs rooms become important. And so you just sort of add these things as needed. And this was never maybe meant to be somebody's house, but you know how people are. People come by and they say, well, why can't I stay over there? Yeah. And they go, well, the rock slides only happen in February and March. I guess it's okay. Sure, why not? You go ahead and stay over there. So then we get trash development and we get use of the rooms, but maybe they weren't meant to be used as rooms. Maybe it's a training facility.
It seems strange though, if it takes them 30 years to build, you know, that they would be putting all that effort into something other than like housing. Or that had a bigger, you know, a big purpose.
Right. It seems like a lot of work to go to for something that doesn't seem like it fits.
Right.
The way that they like to do things. You know, and that's what's fun about archaeology, is that we can come and look at these things and we can all come up with our own explanation. And it doesn't matter, you know, because none of us can prove it.
No.
So we're still always going to say, but I think, you know.
I bet that's a fun community though, being able to like bounce ideas and theories around each other and brainstorm, well, what if this? And and everybody's open to things changing or new ideas. What a concept.
Yeah. I mean, that's the ideal.
Well, cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers to Chaco.
Cheers to Chaco.
It's our last day filming on this.
I'm kind of sad about that.
Yeah.
This has been a lot of fun. We feel like we've had this whole place to ourselves pretty much.
Oh, yeah.
The peace. Oh, this has been amazing and enlightening. All the things we've learned. It's been incredible.
Yeah.
I hope you guys have learned some stuff too.
Yeah, I hope you guys have enjoyed it. We're having a picnic dinner here at the perfect spot, Casa Rinconada, the largest kiva here in Chaco.
Cool.
Super cool.
Good energy.
What are you eating there?
Oh, we got a little ground beef and wild rice and northern white beans, a little broccoli sprout, some kimchi, cilantro, lots of good yummy stuff, some roasted garlic.
Oh, wow.
It's really good.
No kisses for you later, huh?
Nope.
I guess I'm going to have some of that stuff too. Mine's a little more spicy, but cheers. And we have one other special thing we're going to share for dessert here in a moment that you won't want to miss. So again, thank you for watching, and if you want to meet Tori in person, check out Salmon Ruins in Farmington, New Mexico. We can't wait to check it out. So thank you so much, Tori, for the tours. I mean, this place is just incredible.
It's a wonderful place, and it's fun to spend it with people who are interested and curious and want to learn something. And we have a lot of things that we've studied that we can talk about. So, you know, if you just want to come and take pictures, that's fine. But what we really are interested in is people who have questions and who want to talk and interact.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. So, and it's like 100 degrees out here, so it's time for the AC, right?
It's time to drive home in the AC.
Since the ancient Chacoans used to trade for chocolate, we thought we should have a chocolate.
Dark chocolate sea salt. Cheers.
Cheers.
Yum.
Yum.
No, it was good.
Hard to believe they ate chocolate here as well.
They were smart.
Yeah.
It's been forever since I've had chocolate. Over a year, I know.
Yeah, it's been a long time too.
Yeah. This is
good.
Yeah.
It is good.
Wow.
We hope you're enjoying these videos. For the next video, you can click right over here, over Sherie's head, right there. Next time, guys.